love the channel and find it useful in becoming a happy retiree. Subscribe today. So good morning. Welcome back to Money Matters here. I'm your host, Wes Moss, here every Sunday morning to take your calls, your questions. We're talking about this giant active versus passive investment debate. What do you do, ETFs or an active fund or a passive fund or an index fund, and the blending of the two and the three? There's this giant continuum, and it's all driven by emotion. That's the bottom line here. That's never going away. Neither are these investment options. And the great debate that rolls on, and listen, there's a lot happening in the world. We have this constant issue with North Korea. And now we have Trump befriending China. They're not a currency manipulator now, according to Trump, because he needs their pressure on North Korea. And that's going to continue to be a real geopolitical cloud until something happens or there's still some resolution there. The market seems to be okay with it for now, because earnings are getting better. So we've had a really solid earnings season already, and we're looking at earnings growth in the double-digit range, like we had talked about towards the end of last year, thinking this year would happen, and so far it's playing out. And even though we have the GDP report for the first quarter was a little less than 1%, there's an awful lot of data that shows that the hard data, so there's this debate between hard and soft data. The soft data is survey-based, so CEO confidence, consumer sentiment, the Bloomberg Comfort Index, the NFIB, the Small Business Optimism Survey, all at extraordinarily strong data points. So that the sentiment of the country is continuing to be really optimistic for the most part. Yes, the hard data, meaning like the actual numbers coming in, GDP less than 1%, car sales stagnating to some extent, retail spending stagnating a little bit, eventually and historically catches up to the soft data. So our sentiment actually leads us as a nation, and the numbers of the quote hard data eventually comes to fruition and follows through. And that we see this leading data, all this survey data, sentiment very strong. So I think that the actual economic brass tacks will eventually catch up to where sentiment is in America. But at the same time, you've got this swirl of geopolitics, and we have to keep a very close eye on that. That all dovetails back into, as an investor, do you just ride everything out, or do you have some sort of balanced strategy? I think one of the misconceptions about active investing versus passive investing, there's a big difference between being a pure indexer, so just owning the S&P 500 and letting it ride through all the ups and downs, up 10, up 20, down 30, down 50, relative to using low-cost indexes or ETFs in a slightly active way, meaning that a thoughtful balance. As soon as you put different pieces of the equation together, even though they might be passive vehicles like ETFs, you now have a active strategy. By the very nature of owning the U.S. and international, and let's say you own financials and bonds, now, even though they might be indexes, that's really an active strategy because you've chosen to have some diversification. So there's a big difference between the topic of, passive investments beat active investments, just be passive, is really a misleading headline. And we're going to continue to talk about that here on the show for probably the rest of 2017. It's a major theme, along with what's happening in Washington, and how that dovetails into the economy and your investments. Hi, I'm Wes Moss, and thanks for taking a minute to hear about what's so different about my new book, You Can Retire Sooner Than You Think. So unlike other retirement books, this book will give you a step-by-step guide, whether you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s, to learn from what these successful and happy retirees did to get there. I hope you enjoy the book, but more importantly, I know that it'll help you retire sooner than you think.